Today we're going to be talking about the Great Depression. You'll have to forgive me. I've been feeling a little bit sick lately. And you know, in a way, the Great Depression was a lot like a cold for America. See, with a cold, there's lots of reasons why you could get sick. And similar with the Depression, there's lots of reasons why the country had such an economic downturn. A few of these were stock speculation, lax banking regulation, overproduction, and poor economic policy. The result? America was sick. Some historians estimate by 1932, 25% of Americans were unemployed. And the result had real impact. These people couldn't find jobs, they lost their homes, and their life savings. Without work, people couldn't afford to continue purchasing items. And the factories that were already overproducing just had these items stacking up in warehouses with no one to buy them. And because they weren't selling, they had to lay off more employees. This created what's called the cyclical effect, where the economy continues to slow down. So, what was the country to do? Well, there were two schools of thought. Herbert Hoover, who was president from 1928 to 1933, suggested trickle-down economics. This was a system where you'd give the big guy money, and hopefully, by the end, it would spread out to everyone. So a top-down type reform. But, as we can see with the election of 1932, this system wasn't too popular, and it really didn't provide the relief Americans were looking for. So, FDR comes into office, and he has his system, the second school of thought we're going to be talking about, something he calls the New Deal. FDR decided with the New Deal that the best course of action was to expand the role of government. And by expanding the role of government, it could intervene in the economy to ensure that the welfare of the people was looked out for. Now, FDR has been seen as a doctor before, helping out sick Uncle Sam. He's been seen as a chef, cooking, dinner for Americans, trying to mix together a group of social programs that will address their problems, expand the federal government, and help improve the lives of the American people. But today we're going to think of him as Ty Pennington. Why Ty Pennington? Well, he's the host of ABC's Extreme Home Makeover, and he's going to come in, fix up the house, America, help out the family, the American people, and he's going to do this by using his toolbox. And there are three main types of tools that he's going to use. The first is relief. You can think about relief tools as helping the family immediately in the situation where they are right now. So with Ty Pennington and Extreme Home Makeover, it's sending them off to a hotel so they can stay. But in the New Deal, we're going to see there's a whole bunch of different types of relief programs we'll get into. Secondly, are recovery programs. Recovery programs are to get the house up and steady. Make sure the foundation is strong. Make sure the house is put together. And the last type are the reform programs. Making sure that the house stays strong and steady, changing the rules so that the family can function better. Now we're going to look at some of these examples in the New Deal and how FDR implemented them. Okay, so here we go. The first that we're going to talk about is the REA, or the Rural Electrification Act. This essentially was to bring electricity to regions of the country that hadn't had electricity already. So it was expanding these services so we could develop new industries in different areas of the country. This would help people out a lot. And today we can think of a modern example of this. The FCC is actually trying to expand broadband access to regions of the country that don't have it right now.
Did you know a third of American homes still rely on a dial-up connection or don't have any internet at all? Well, if the FCC has its way, that's all about to change thanks to the National Broadband Plan. If enacted, the plan would bring fast and affordable broadband speeds of 100 megabits per second to everyone, which is about 12 times faster than most broadband users currently have in their homes. The plan also aims to bring free Wi-Fi to many cities and greatly increase the mobile phone spectrum. The downside? The National Broadband Plan carries with it an estimated $350 billion price tag. Some say that by the time it goes into effect by 2020, its services will be obsolete. What else is in the 360-page plan the FCC will take to Congress tomorrow? And should the FCC even be in the business of being an internet service provider? I love it when a plan comes together. It's The Loop!
Next on our list is the CCC, or the Civilian Conservation Corps. This was a public works program that had young urban men working to build parks. If you've been to Chestnut Ridge Park, There's a lot of work that was done by the CCC to make that park so nice. There are many modern examples of state efforts to employ young people to work in parks.
Every day, Brittany and Eddie travel along the roads in their gator at McCormick's Creek State Park looking for trash. They're a part of the newly organized Youth Conservation Corps. As part of the stimulus plan, the state of Indiana received federal money to start the program, employing youth aged 16 through 24 whose income falls below a certain level. The goal? To get some people out of unemployment and into the workforce.
So you might be thinking to yourself, well, what about all the other workers out there? What sort of programs were there for them? Well, the WPA was one solution. The Works Progress Administration set aside funds not only for infrastructure projects and public improvement, but it also put people to work doing what they loved. So artists, songwriters, photographers, and playwrights had funding so that they could put on these programs. Of course, art programs are only going to go so far. Like I said, America really had to reinvent itself. It had to find new industries. The automobile industry, the housing industry had slowed down, and so America really had to consider how to improve its infrastructure and reinvent itself. Kind of like a problem that we're experiencing today. Another one of these programs that helped us overcome that gap was the TVA, or the Tennessee Valley Authority. It established a lot of hydroelectric power plants that we have still today and are quite functional. But coming back to Ty Pennington, there's no reason to rebuild the house if the family's just going to trash it up later and have it fall to pieces. So we had to deal with some of these issues that were confronting us to begin with. And one of them that we've talked about is stock speculation. So a program that was developed to sort of police stock speculation and make sure that stock trading was more fair was the SEC, or the Security Exchange Commission. They're really important, and if you follow the news, they've busted people from Martha Stewart to Bernie Madoff, and they make sure that the stock market operates more fairly. And how about banks? For investors in banks, they have the FDIC, or the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. See, back when there were runs on the banks in the 1929, 1930s, the problem was that the banks would run out of that money. They didn't have it to pay back to their investors. Well, the FDIC has the federal government insuring the money that you have in your savings account up to $250,000. Now, not all of FDR's programs were supported by Americans, not all were found constitutional. So we're going to look at two specific examples of programs that FDR wanted to use to improve conditions, but maybe wasn't able to get off the ground. The first was the AAA, or Agricultural Adjustment Agency, and essentially it was designed to deal with the problem of overproduction. See, what it did was it paid farmers not to produce. This would level off prices, because if they weren't producing, then prices would stabilize. So there are actually cases where they told a farmer to kill off their excess livestock, or they'd stop someone and they'd have them dump out some of their milk on the road before heading to the market. That way prices could stabilize, farmers could make a decent wage, and we wouldn't have this negative cyclical effect anymore. Now, this was found unconstitutional in a Supreme Court case of the United States versus Butler. Secondly was the NRA. Now, this was a lot bigger of a program. There was the NRA and then the NIRA. So that's the National Recovery Act and the National Industrial Recovery Act. Both of these were found unconstitutional, but they essentially had government very involved in business so that they could control the market, control prices, set hours, and make sure working conditions were good. Now, the problem was that there was a poultry company in New York that only dealt within New York State. And so when these regulations were applied to that poultry company, they sued, saying that it was unconstitutional because Congress can only regulate interstate trade, not intrastate trade. And so unfortunately, the NRA was found unconstitutional. So what was FDR to do about this? Well, he came up with a plan to pack the Supreme Court with some extra justices. He was going to raise the number of Supreme Court justices so that when an issue of unconstitutionality came up, FDR could have these justices that he put in say that, yeah, that's constitutional, that's fine. Now, this didn't end up happening. We still have 9 Supreme Court justices instead of 15, but it was one way FDR tried to cope with the difficulties he was facing. Overall, the New Deal was sometimes criticized by people like Huey Long or Father Coughlin, saying that the federal government didn't get involved enough for the people, that it should do more to spread the wealth. And in the cases we saw with the Supreme Court, sometimes people thought the federal government was getting too involved in their business. But, whatever side of the debate you're on, the federal government expanded its role, got involved in the welfare of the people, trying to improve conditions and regulate the economy. Laissez-faire wouldn't cut it anymore. The American federal government was now going to play more of a role. Now, historians still debate the effectiveness of the New Deal and how it got us out of the Depression. Some attribute it to World War II and the expansion in the production of the military-industrial complex, but some give the New Deal more credit, and it's difficult to say. But FDR's message was upbeat. From his fireside chats,
the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
And of course, happy days are here again. Thank you. I'll see you next time.
The skies above are clear again. Let us sing a song of cheer again. Happy